Alex here at Air Performance. We're back at it again with another installation video. Today we're going to be doing a front wheel hub installation on Tio's E92 M3. He's been kind of complaining of a steering wheel vibration at this point, so we've replaced many parts, and to be quite honest, somewhat parts through at this car, but we actually diagnosed it now to a bad wheel bearing on the right side. So we're going to be showing you the process of how to remove, take off the wheel bearing, install it, all the torque specs and everything, kind of how you've come to know with our videos. And it's a pretty straightforward install. You can definitely do it in your driveway. We'll be doing it on the lift today, but I mean, the process is still the same. So it's definitely a DIY friendly install. So you'll be needing, honestly, probably around a couple hours of your time if you're doing it on your driveway. If you're having a shop do it, usually it takes no more than an hour and a half, 2 hours typically. Not sure what book time would be for shops around the country, but that's typically our install time. So pretty straightforward, it's really easy. So we'll show you what tools you'll need and we'll get started. So the tools that you'll need are pretty simple, something that probably most of you already have. You're gonna be needing a 3/8 ratchet, 1/4 inch ratchet, a couple of wrenches. I think we're going to be using 18 mil, 16 mil, 10 millimeter. An Allen set works great. We'll be removing the ABS sensor. I believe it's a 5 millimeter Allen. 10 millimeter sockets, 16 millimeter for the sway bar. If you have a wheel lock, you'll be using that as well. We have a 17 and a 19 millimeter 1/2 inch socket for the wheels. We have an 18 millimeter swivel socket for the impact. So to be quite frank, we are going to be cheating a little bit, but you could do this again with hand tools. Have our impact gun set right here, 1/2 inch right here. We have the 3/8 off to the side. And then the tools that you'll basically be needing for this install is, we do these in pairs. So we have 2 wheel bearings right here, one on each side. And we also have brand new wheel hub bolts. This is a mandatory thing. I wouldn't recommend reusing your old ones just because they have this thread locker on there. BMW calls to replace them, so we're just going to replace them as per factory manual recommendation. And that's pretty much it. There's not much to it. Like I said, book a couple hours if you're doing it yourself and it's your first time. But you could reference the video, and if you get stuck at any point in time, you can rewind and do all that stuff. So now that we've shown you what you would need to do the install, let's go ahead and get started and tackle this job. Spoke too soon. So I'm taking the wheel studs off the old hub while it's still in the car. I used a torch to heat up the studs up to loosen up the Loctite. They say that you should double nut it to get it off, but I'm a little lazy. I'm gonna use my 5 millimeter impact, so we'll see how that goes. Now, if you don't have an impact at home and you're using truly traditional hand tools, screwdriver in the rotor will let you break it loose, and I'll demonstrate that right now. Just don't burn your hand if you use the torch. Just like that. Just for you DIYers that don't have any power tools at home. And if it's really stuck where you can't get it off, then I recommend you just buying new studs. Before we take the caliper off, I usually take off the harness here for the ABS sensor and the brake wear sensor, just so it's not hanging. Usually it just pops right out like that. And then we take them out like that. Now we don't have to worry about them dangling too much. We're going to be taking off this caliper. I'm going to take off these bolts right here. They're 18 millimeters. Once you do that, you can hang it up with a bungee cord and swing it out of the way. So now that I got the caliper loose, usually it just comes right off. Kind of wiggle it sometimes. If it doesn't come off like how it is right now, you can use a screwdriver to kind of pry back the caliper brake pads, and it will usually let you take the caliper out. Sometimes because there's a lip on the rotor, so that's preventing you from removing it. So I'm gonna do that right now. Let's see if I can get it in. Or actually, let's do this. And then hang it up on the coilover itself. You can use anything to hold it up, just as long as it's out of the way. Now we're gonna go ahead and remove the brake rotor. It's gonna be held on by 2 set screws, usually they're 5mm. As you can tell, this one is somewhat stripped, so if we have to extract it, we'll show you how to do it. So this one is pretty stripped. I'm gonna try to impact it off, but yeah, it's pretty stripped. Shorter 5mm. And actually, I got lucky. Sometimes you don't get lucky. But usually that's how they're supposed to come out. So next order of business is getting this rotor to come off. Usually I smack around this area if I'm gonna replace the rotor, but in this case we're not. So I'm gonna be tapping around the rotor hat itself and just kind of get it off little by little. So just like that. So we got it where we have just the wheel hub, and usually some signs of this failing is that it free spins a little too much. This one's kind of still okay, but there is actually like a ticking noise that we were hearing while you were especially like cornering and stuff. So sometimes they get really worn and you have like very excessive play up and down. So that's usually the sign of when these go bad. So luckily this is just a bolt-on solution. It's not like some cars where you have to press in and out of bearing into the hub. This is pretty easy. Luckily BMW did do that. So we're gonna remove the 4 bolts in the back and this should come right out. So now we're on the back side of the wheel bearing itself. Now, if you're watching this from home, this may look a little different depending on your suspension setup, whether you're still on the stock strut or in a coilover, such as in the case of us where we have these coilovers. If you are on a coilover, you're probably going to have direct access to the 18mm bolts on the back. If you have the factory strut, those actually come down quite a bit further, and it may be blocking your access to the top 18mm bolts. So if that ends up being the case where you're not able to get to the bolts because of the factory suspension setup, what you would need to do is there is a 16mm bolt right here where I'm pointing at, and then there's a 16mm nut on the back side that you need to remove. And you would also need to use a strut spindle tool like this and put it in between right here with the bolt removed out of the way, and turn it so that way the strut would come down and you can gain access to these bolts. So it is a little different if depending on your suspension setup at home. We're gonna show you how to drop the strut right now, just in case if you are on the factory suspension. If not, then you can ignore this part, but we just want to be, thorough with all of our suspension installs. So before I do that, I'm actually probably gonna remove this ABS wire right here. It's a 5mm Allen, so we'll just get out of the way before we damage it. And usually gotta twist a little bit and it comes right out. And you can tell sometimes when the sensors are clean like this, that's a good sign. Sometimes they get really dirty with debris because the bearing really fails. So yeah, it's really good. So let me get the strut off and we'll go from there. I got my pull jack in place. If you're doing this on jack stands at home, you would put your floor jack right here on the lower control arm. There is this bolt, the 16mm bolt and nut arrangement that you're gonna loosen. Let me grab my tools right here. And I usually just get in there like that. And then, so we got that loosened. Get the bolt out.
nut, and there's like a bracket like right here. It holds the harness and everything up. Just swing it out of the way, and we can rearrange this afterwards. Not really a big deal. Just make sure to not get any of these cables tangled up with suspension components and stuff like that. Now that we have that out of the way, we can grab our special tool. If you do not have this, you can use like a big screwdriver and a hammer to kind of pry it up. And if that's the case, if you're at home, like truly DIYing this, and you don't drop the screwdriver like I do, you can put the screwdriver like right here in the between. Usually you'll need a pretty thick screwdriver, like much thicker than this, but I'm just showing this for demonstration. And usually you'll hit it up like this, and it'll open up the strut so you can actually drop this, if that's the case, if you don't have the tool. But if you have the tool like we do, which is this, you usually can put it in between, like right here. And it is a tight fit, so you have to be mindful. Like that. And now you turn it just a little bit, about 90 degrees, to where this is pretty much from straight up and down to just 90, and you can lower your jack just a little bit, and you'll start to see the strut drop down. As you can see, it's actually coming down. This is only applicable if you're on the stock factory strut. If you're on a coilover, then you don't need to worry about this process. We're only showing you just in case if you're at home and you don't have coilovers and you're doing this job, we want to show you how to take all that stuff off. Once you do your wheel bearing, if you're having to do the step, then you just pretty much jack the strut back up all the way until you see the strut bottom out, which it will physically not go in any further. And if you're having a hard time putting it back in or taking it out, usually a trick that I do is I just wiggle right here at the top of the wheel bearing. You can wiggle this as you're going up or down, and it'll help you kind of drop it, you know, either down or up. So just trying to help you guys out with, you know, any of the steps. But I'm gonna put this all back together, obviously, because we have a coilover, and go from there. So I got the strut back in its original position. I've got the bracket that holds the brake line and the ABS cable and the brake wear sensor back in its spot. You can see that it has this little tab here. There's a hole, putting the bolt back in, just like that. Should go right in. There is another hole on this end that it goes into to secure it fully. And then there's a 16 mil nut that goes on the back side. So we're gonna put that back on, and we'll tighten that up to spec. 45 millimeters, if you have to do this process. If not, you ignore it. Okay. So now we can move on to back to our original video. So I'm gonna take the 18 mil bolts that hold the wheel bearing, using an impact with the swivel. You might have to use various extensions and sockets to maybe get these off, but this is how we do it. And these do have Loctite, so they may be very difficult to remove, hence why I'm using the impact gun. And you might get better access by turning the wheels left and right. Just be careful with the caliper if you're dangling it like me right now. There's your wheel bearing. So here's the old wheel bearing compared to the new one. It's quite radically different in terms of the corrosion and everything. One thing that is very striking to me is the old wheel bearings, and maybe up until probably the last 2 years,
They had these really nice like dowel pins to center the hub to the rotor and everything. Now it looks like they're using Allen screws to do the same job. So say that as you will in terms of quality that's coming out of all the part suppliers all over the world right now. This is an OEM Schaeffler bearing, I think is how you pronounce it, which were the originals for these cars. So only time will tell how long this bearing is going to last compared to the original that was on this car for what, 160,000 miles. So yeah, it's just really it. Still decent quality, but long-term longevity on the part, not too sure. We'll have to probably do a follow-up on that at some point. But here's the bearings, just side by side. Just want to compare them, make sure they're okay. They're the same. They look the same. They are a Bolton type. Thankfully, they're not a press type, so super easy. We're gonna go ahead and clean up the hub surface here, and then get these installed on the car. As you can tell, there's like this little nub right here. This is gonna line up close to this little hole right here. So you just wanna put it on like that. Get your 4 new bolts and thread them in. So we're gonna go ahead and torque the new wheel bearing bolts. Torque spec is 110 Newton meters. Nice quality torque wrench always helps. An 18 mil, so if you are having a hard time getting to some of the bolts, just turn the wheels left and right. They usually will give you enough clearance to get to everything. 2. Again, if you are turning the wheels, just be careful with the caliper. Make sure it's secured. There we go. We are torqued. Once you have them torqued, I like to mark them. You can use a paint pen, marker, or whatever you want, crayon, just so that way I know I torqued them and we're good. So now that we have them torqued, we can go ahead and start putting everything back together. Don't forget to put your ABS sensor back in. ABS sensor's in. Mark my bolt, make sure, again, so I know I torqued it. Now we could put the caliper back on, or the brake rotor caliper, and away we go. This one actually goes like this. So we got the rotor back on. Now it's time to put the caliper and put the wheel back on. Make sure all of our connections are back in their respective places, like the ABS sensor, cables, and all that. And then put the wheel, put our new studs back on, then we're done. Just making sure I'm putting all of the wires back in. So we got all of our connectors back on, got all of our brake lines back in their respective spots on their brackets, put the ABS sensor and brake wear sensor back in their home. We're just gonna torque the 2 caliper bolts, 110 Newton meters, and we're pretty much done. I am gonna make sure these caliper bolts are nice and snug.
Oh, did they fall off? They back out?
No, well, if you don't time them, yes. But whenever I deal with brakes, I always just verify, make sure. Last thing you want is a brake caliper falling off while you're driving. So we put a little bit of blue Loctite on the studs. just because that's what motorsport hardware calls out for. The torque spec for the studs is 25 foot-pounds. I usually use a screwdriver in the rotor, and then it's a 5 millimeter Allen, and just go ahead and torque them. Now that that's on, put our wheel spacer on, just like that. Put the wheel back on, and we're all set. Now that we got the wheel back on the car, we got the wheel studs torqued to 25 foot-pounds. We're gonna torque the lug nuts to 88 foot-pounds and finish off the job. Just one place. So that pretty much wraps up the installation video for the E92 M3 front wheel hub install. As you guys saw, it's pretty straightforward, and I hope that it helped you out, whether you were doing it alongside with us or you're just using it as reference. Again, just needed a special tool if you're gonna drop the strut for whatever reason, but you can get away with it with a screwdriver and a hammer. Aside from that, it's basic hand tools and torque wrenches that you could buy at your local hardware store that you may already have laying around in your tools as it is. So it's a pretty straightforward install. Again, probably for you, maybe depending on your skill set, 2 to 3 hours, you know, if you're doing it on jack stands. And that's the beauty of these DIYs, is that we kind of showcase, like, you know, whether you're in a professional shop environment such as us, or if you're doing it at home, wherever you are in the world, it's something that you could definitely, you know, tackle very easily. So we got these knocked out. Tio's gonna be very happy. Probably the noise is gonna be gone at this point. We're gonna test drive it and make sure it's all good. And then for the next video, we're definitely gonna be showcasing how to do the rear bearings on this car. On the M3s and 3 Series in general, it's a little more difficult because it's not a bolt-on affair. You definitely have to take apart a lot of stuff, and it's a press-on type of hub. So we'll showcase how to do that in an upcoming video. Aside from that, that's all we have for today. We appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and if you have any other questions, just drop them below. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. And if you want to have this done locally here in Southern California, you can find us here at Air Performance. We're in Garden Grove, California. Shop number is 714-719-8912. The phone's always open. You can call us. I'll pick up. So if you need it done, just let us know. But until next time, we'll see you in the next video. Now I got my hands dirty again.